All right, boys and girls, so what we need to decide is, are you going to be using oil pastels or markers for your drawing? If you have to color in smaller areas, I would recommend using the markers. If you are going to need to color a larger area or have a color that you can't normally get with a marker, I would suggest oil pastels. So we're going to just start with markers for the crayons. And I have my yellow marker here. I'm going to put the cap on the back. And I'm going to use the hand that I'm not coloring with to color in the French fries yellow. Now what you can see is I'm outlining the shape. Everything should be Sharpied right now. And you want to press nice and firmly. And make sure you get inside the lines. If your marker is dry, it's definitely better to get a new marker. So I'm just using the tip of the marker to outline, and then you can see I'm going back and forth to make these French fries nice and yellow. And I already decided you really need to plan out your design. Don't just do it randomly. You really need to plan out your colors, because if you are going to be using oil pastels in your design, I'm going to tell you this tip. Use the markers first, okay? Do all the markers first and then do the oil pastels. The reason why is that the oil pastels are a little bit messy. The colors are super bold and bright, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you do the markers first, because you cannot color on top of oil pastels, but the oil pastels can go on top of the markers. So you can see I'm coloring in no white spots. You want to make it look like paint. You want it to be super saturated. For pop art, we use really, really bright colors. So no white spots, nice and bold. And then I already decided for my French fries that I want to use, and make sure that you snap the cap here. I already decided that I'm going to do a red and white design, kind of like a McDonald's theme. So this is a Mr. Sketch marker. I'm going to put the cap on the back here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip each section, okay? So I just kind of coated it. I'm going to do red and white. So I'm outlining the shape and then back and forth, nice and neat. So it's a nice solid red. And if you want it darker, you may want to go over it at least 2 times. So I outline the shape with kind of the tip of the marker. Now that the Mr. Sketch marker is different designs, like a wedge tip, not cone like the Crayola. So you have to be mindful of the shape of the marker. And I like to use the tip of the marker to outline, and then the wide side to color. You want to make sure that your color is even. Actually, I'm really glad I went outside the line there, because I want to show you how you can fix that. We'll fix that later with a Sharpie. So with your design, now that it's outlined in Sharpie, you can always fix your mistakes, because all you need to do is go over your line a little bit more with a Sharpie, and you'll just have a thicker line, and no one will ever know that you went out of the line. And I'm going to outline the shape here. You also need to decide what you want your background to be. Now, I already decided that I'm going to have mine be blue. So, put the cap back on the marker. Now that I made that little mistake there, I'm just going to take my Sharpie and trace over the line a little bit. And just color it in, and no one will ever know that you went outside the line. It almost looks like a shadow effect too. And I also decided that I'm gonna have my background be blue. And the background, I'm going to use an oil pastel for this. So with the oil pastels, just like crayons, they have this paper here. So you have to make sure that you use your nail here, and you could peel it if it's too, don't worry if you get oil pastels in your hand, you can use a wipe or a paper towel to clean it later on. So the oil pastels is a different effect. What you do is you color the area, and it looks like it's crayon, but it's not. It's really like a paint and a stick. Then you use your Mr. Dirty Hand to blend. So it's a nice, smooth texture. And it's fun to experiment. If you want to do your background, I would choose using oil pastels. So what you want to do is you want to color a little section and then blend. Also, I'm using my Mr. Clean Hand here to hold the paper still. Now you can use marker for the background, but it's kind of fun to experiment with different. If you're coloring a large area, this is going to be my tip for you. I'm going to rotate this now. If you're coloring a large area, I would use oil pastels. If you're coloring hard to get to areas like the details of the French fries and the inside, I would use oil pastels. So you want to blend it so that you don't have any white spots. So again, I'm using my hand to hold the paper still, and I'm rotating it around because I like to use my right hand to blend and color. So if you're using oil pastels, you really want to make sure that you color and blend, color and blend. You don't want to color the whole thing and then blend it, because sometimes your finger might get a little bit hot. So now you're going to see here, we're going to get into some harder to reach areas. Fortunately, your fingers are a little smaller than mine, but you may want to use a different finger. Like I think I actually might use my pinky finger in there, a smaller finger, to blend in those harder to reach areas. And if you get on top of the marker, it just happens, it's okay. But you want to blend in the same direction. It has a nice velvety feel to it. So now I'm going to color in. Now again, make sure your fingers are clean and you hold it still. You want to color the inside of your drawing, and then the background will be colored in later. So depending on where we get to in class, we might do the background another time. So now when you're blending, again, I'm using a few different fingers here. You want to make sure that you try not to get on top of your drawing, but it's probably going to happen a little bit, but that's okay. Just take your time. Get into those white spots. I'm going to use my pinky finger now. And if you can't get into the blending, then you could just use the oil pastel to color it in those harder to reach areas. So I'm just going to use the oil pastel to color in. And again, the Sharpie doesn't work as well. I see I went over a few spots. So later on, you can take your Sharpie and kind of smooth out the lines that you might have gone over a little bit with the oil pastel. But the oil pastel sometimes doesn't work so well with the Sharpie on top of it because it does have some wax in it. But there is your French fries.